Hello. I want to thank the New Jersey Legal Assistance Program, the New Jersey Association of Justice, and the Transitions Committee of the New Jersey State Bar Association for this opportunity to share what matters and presenting at your best for virtual and live meetings. So let me begin and share my screen. And here we go. So this presentation was delivered on June 25th, but just in case you weren't there, we had not recorded it then, so we are doing it now. So I want you to think about your challenges of working from home, working with digital platforms, and comparing that to how it is to be in a room with people directly and its impact on your communication skills and presentations. I've been working as a presentation coach for about 30 years, starting as a speech pathologist in a medical educational model, moving into the mental health field, and then from private practice, pivoting to being a business consultant in the area of speaking and presenting. So when we started working from home and my clients were no longer at their locations, I had an oh my God experience. This is what used to be for me, going to network meetings or being a speaker in front of a group. And this is what I'm now dealing with. And sometimes not this large an audience, but still an audience that I can't touch, that I can't feel, that I can't see. And for me, having perfected my art of communication as a speaker and working a room kind of person, this has been a major challenge. So I'm sure it is for many of you as well. Perhaps not that large an audience, but a smaller audience. This is possibly what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a client or a colleague or a court situation. So our goal today is to give you some tools and techniques to help you present at your best, whether it's for a remote meeting or whether it's in front of a group. And of course, to address some of the challenges and some of the benefits of either or both the virtual and live experience. If you have any questions, because this is a webinar and there's no live audience right now, feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to respond to your questions. So over the years, I've had many tools and techniques and have honed different versions of them to help people present at their best, but only maybe 10 years ago did I realize I actually had a model. So my communication model is called 4 points of connection. And these are the elements that drive communication. So there is a beginning point that might be your attitude, your belief system, your thoughts, and your feelings, how you feel about presenting. If you don't feel like you want to work a room or you're not comfortable in front of an audience, that is going to impact perhaps some of the other elements that you need to have to present fully. Besides your inner self, of course, there's what you want to say, your messaging, and that has that can be organized well or not organized well, and how long you speak and the tone of how you speak is also part of your message. So a very important part of communication. Considering your audience is essential. Why prepare something that is off the mark for your audience? So for example, for me, I am not an attorney and I have limited experience working with attorneys, although more recently. And I needed to interview a handful of lawyers and people who are in court to understand fully how I can make this presentation of value for my audience? It's important because you want to be perceived as credible and have a value in terms of putting this energy into a webinar, or a live presentation. So anything that you can learn about your audience ahead of time is a good best practice. And finally, how you deliver your physical self, what you do, how you behave, and what you appear, what you look like. And I'm not talking about being beautiful or being a model or being a iconic image. I'm talking about doing the best with what you have and projecting that in the best way you can. So thinking about your presentation to a live or virtual audience, you have to know that your audience is composed of many different types of people. Everyone has their unique DNA and their unique experiences, but their brains probably process your information in one of 4 or 5 ways. So I asked the audience now to think about, how do you prefer to get information, and perhaps the news. You might be a very text intensive type, and your brain or your preference is to read, whether it's online or a newspaper. Similarly, or opposing reading, you might be better off learning by watching the news, because now you have visual personal input as well as sound. So seeing and hearing simultaneously might be your preference. Some people might be better off listening than seeing and listening, and they are more radio or podcast oriented. And maybe some of your audience have no preference, or all of the above, depending upon the context. What's important here is to know that your audience falls into these categories, and you want to have something in your presentation for everybody. So what are the contexts where communication occurs, and particularly presentation? So it could be an online interview, it could be a live interview. Networking has been in a room, but lately now remote. Doing presentations for webinars, doing presentations in court, doing presentations for staff meetings or conferences, selling or marketing. You're often presenting yourself in a way that is an organized approach to communication. Socially, Match.com or other online platforms, or being introduced to someone, you again are the person who is not only presenting information, you're presenting yourself. Of course, we have situations of negotiation and then argument. So here are some of the contexts. Please text or email me with other contexts that are relevant to you that I may not have addressed. So in these contexts, what really matters? Well, it's interesting that the research has always looked at first impressions from a visual, vocal, and verbal perspective. And so 55% is thought to be more of how you appear before you even open your mouth. And then 38% in terms of tone, and the rest is your messaging. And again, this is just within 30 to 60 seconds of a first impression. You may agree or not, but here's something that's I think, importance here. In a Zoom room, what matters changes compared to being live in an audience or before an audience. Let's look at some of these visual and nonverbal influencers for those first impressions, which can be lasting impressions, by the way. Your height, your weight, your complexion, how you wear your hair or the color of your hair, your facial expressions, your eyes and eye contact, whether you smile, what your teeth are like. My mom's a big teeth person. Your posture, stance, clothing, colors that you wear, jewelry. And here's a nonverbal that we often don't think about, your energy or presence. Sometimes we think of it as charisma or passion. And then some other nonverbals that you might have not thought about is your smell, whether you smell of cigarette or tobacco, garlic or cologne. And guess what? These are not very relevant when it comes to a virtual meeting. Neither is your height so important or your posture. We are mostly sitting when we're doing these virtual online meetings. So some things are going to be more weighty in terms of importance than others. It's really hard for me as a speech pathology major back when to separate the vocal and the verbal, because if you're talking, your voice is on. But let's look at the components of voice, whether you're loud or soft, your volume, your pitch. Is it a high pitched sound, a low pitched sound, or something in between? The resonance of your tone. Is it nasal? Is it strident? Is it pleasant? How fast you speak. Very fast, rapid talkers may not have as much impact as more moderate speakers. Your pausing, the intonation, and where you put your emphasis for your messaging. These are some of the vocal components, the voice components, that do impact people consciously or unconsciously. And yes, there can be unconscious bias about how you sound. On the messaging side, we have your vocabulary, what kind of grammar you use, how long is the sentence that you use to describe what you need to describe, the complexity of language, pronunciation, those vocal fillers, and how much repetition or redundancy might impact one of your audience types, but not all. So these are all aspects of communication that do unconsciously or consciously impact your listeners. So you want to be aware of them, if nothing else. So the challenge number one was my challenge in the beginning when the work at home order came out and I knew I was no longer going to companies or seeing clients in my office. The first thought was an inner thought. It was an inner feeling. It was inner. It was, oh my God, now I won't be able to see my clients. Now I can't do what I do best, which is to be in front of an audience and work a room or coach people and help them improve. So my, oh my God, was, oh no, which is a kind of mindset and a amount of resistance that I had to move through and shift in order to be able to present to you today. Secondly, there were some challenges in terms of digital learning. I did not have Zoom on my computer before the COVID-19 shutdown, lockdown. Now I had to get accustomed to working remotely and learn the digital systems. My attitude about that needed to change because it was another, oh no, oh my God. So digital learning was another part of my resistance and the opportunity to pivot. And lastly, I don't know about you, it doesn't matter if you feel like you look good or you don't look good. I am not a person who enjoys seeing myself photographed or having myself projected in a Zoom room to many people. When I'm in front of an audience, I'm not about me because I'm not seeing me. But when you are speaking to the air or to the camera, as I am now, it's a whole lot different when you can also see yourself in the corner of your screen. And then if you're a little bit critical, you know, not like your hair or not like the way you look, and it's a distraction. So I had to get over these three inner pieces in order to move forward. So what I want to leave you with in terms of this challenge about your reaction or response to change is to allow yourself, your feelings, to recognize where you're coming from and be compassionate and towards yourself and do your best not to go into a negative spin. Instead, cultivate curiosity and find support if you need it. So if you aren't good with the digital, find someone who is and let them help you. And always think of things as a possibility rather than an oh no, I'm learning as well. Challenge number 2, connecting and influencing, eye contact and feedback. Okay, so when I'm in a room and I am speaking or training or facilitating, I know exactly where to look. When you're live, the best practice for engaging your audience is to look individually at people, one at a time, like you do in a conversation. And while this is a skill set that is not taught from day one in school or even in many college presentation courses or post-college business presentation courses, it is the state of the art to look at one person at a time and deliver a piece of your message. Now, why is this so palpable? Well, physically, it's palpable. Energy of nonverbal communication has impact. You know that feeling when you're walking down the street and you feel like someone's walking behind you, or you feel like someone's looking at you. We feel things that we don't also necessarily see. So in a live meeting, looking at one person at a time is an art. And think of it this way: you aim your eyes towards a person in silence, and then you speak. And that messaging is coming onto the connection that you've already made non-verbally. So I sometimes look at this as like casting a line non-verbally and then speaking and reeling that person in. Or target practice, aiming for that person and then click, I'm sending a message, not shooting them down, sending the message, shooting out the message. So in a live presentation, your eyes are working one-on-one rather than scanning a room, because you don't really influence individuals by scanning a room, but by directing your eyes one person at a time, shifting your eyes to another person, continuing your thought to them. However, when you're in a virtual situation, you cannot get your energy of eye contact to an individual in your Zoom room. The best that you can do is what journalists have been trained to do, broadcasters have been trained to do, and that is to direct your eyes to the camera. When you're looking at the camera, it gives the impression that you're looking to individuals. So it is the mass media, what do you call it, media training, but it is very, very different than working a room or connecting with individuals. You probably can't, if you're looking at the mirror, at the camera, also see everybody's reaction that's in the room, because your eyes can't be looking in two places at once. So the feedback you get is going to be in a chat or is going to be in a question. And this is for people like myself who like human connection and interaction, a little frustrating. Now, you could have two monitors and that could be helpful, but the most of us are just getting into this, and we're not broadcasters and we're not journalists. So the best skill set that I can share with you when it comes to virtual is treat the camera as one person, and know that when you look at the camera, your eyes are broadcasting to your audience, whether there's one or there's 20. And it does have an impersonal feel, but it is a skill set that you can develop. Now, moving a foot back will allow you to see the camera and your slides deck if you're sharing something. Now, is it wrong if you're going to look at the screen and then look at the camera? There is no right and wrong anymore. We're not broadcasters. This is, assuming we're not broadcasting this. You will do the best you can. My job here is to define what works, and then to give you an opportunity to check it out. So challenge number 2 is, how do you use your eyes for connection and feedback? Challenge number 3 is, how do you keep your audience interested and not distracted? What are they seeing when are they looking at you at all? Maybe they're multitasking. Maybe they have stopped their video because they have a child that they have to attend to, or a barking dog, or someone came to their door. So we don't know if they're even looking. You can't always see your audience. Another frustration or difference from what is in a room. If you are in a room using your eyes correctly, you are getting the feedback. You are noticing things. You can't notice the same things when you're in a Zoom room. We don't know in either situation how people are processing. Maybe they've turned off their video share because they can listen better rather than be present visually. And what makes them listen refers to, again, the different ways people process. Is it facts? Is it stories? Is it your slides? So these are aspects of presenting that relate to live and virtual audiences. You want to have some information that's factual, some information that's storylined, and some slides that will grab attention. So you can't tell usually in a Zoom room if your listeners are listening, if your eyes are directed at the camera. But you might pause yourself and say, what questions do you have? To break up the speaking only role and to get some engagement. That can happen in a live presentation too, but you're usually getting some feedback of people multitasking, doing sidebars, looking at their phones, maybe closing their eyes, and you have that opportunity because you can see and feel what's going on to take a pause, ask a question, or mention that you think people will need a bio break or a stretch break because you're seeing a lot of heads down. Perhaps the air conditioner is not working anymore, so people are tired. It's not always about you. Challenge number 4, background and environment. When you walk into a networking event, as we used to do, and there's a room, your role as a presenter might be to check out the equipment before you give your presentation and to see where you want to stand, perhaps not in one part, on the right side of the room or the left side of the room, or where you're not going to block your screen. But that's not the case in a virtual environment. This is probably what's most important for you as you become more comfortable with remote platforms, as I've had to do. This is not something that like I said, that I've been doing for my last 30 years. This is definitely a pivot for me. So your background is part of you. And we have virtual backgrounds, yes, we do. And what I want to say is, you want to be seen at your best. So just like you would dress professionally to go to a meeting, you might think about your clothing and if it's appropriate. Of course, you're only going to be seen from the chest up. So yes, some people are going to be in pajamas or jeans, and they're in the schizophrenic zone, as I call it, where they're doing business from the chest up and they're still relaxed at home, and their role as mother or parent or exercise participant from the waist down. But your lighting and the angle of how you're positioning yourself are very important, in my opinion. So we take a look at this image and we see someone that looks like he's smiling. We know it's gender male, and we got a fan in the background. But most importantly here, what you see is someone who is in the dark. And if you're going to be in the dark, then I wouldn't have this, I don't think that's a good thing for you. I think you need to um, get some lighting or find a room that works better. Here's someone who is also in the dark, but more importantly, we're looking at them like from below. Not the best angle for this person, although many people with iPads are having them flat on their desk and looking down. And so this is what you see. And here's a virtual background. I think it's cool, but is it appropriate for someone in a virtual court meeting? To me, no. It's distracting. So this is your responsibility to light yourself or to dress a certain way or to angle your image so that you look your best. And I do know that people pay attention to this because I was on a meeting and someone commented very favorably about someone's background. Is that your home? No, it isn't. It's a virtual background. But it was a virtual background of a home and it was very tight and attractive. What about multitasking? Yes, multitasking is not necessarily a bad thing. You can do some things simultaneously. You can cook and listen to a podcast. You can write a memo or an email and also be listening to a presentation. But you usually can't do two visual things at the same time or two auditory things at the same time. So you have to decide if you're going to listen and watch, just listen and turn your video off, or allow yourself to be seen or not. And this has implications for the meeting itself. For example, if 90% of the attendees have a video on, but you're more comfortable with the video off as a participant, you run a risk of being perceived as non-participatory in its fullest. That may not be your truth. I'm just saying people judge. And so you have to make the call, you know, whether you want to be a listener only or be visible. And last challenge is digital fatigue. I tire in my eyes from being on a screen more of the day than I've ever used to in the past. So I am sure some of you feel that. It's like we're using the skill sets of interpersonal communication in a digital format. And that's almost like going to a country where you don't know the language and trying to pay attention. It's very, very fatiguing to listen to a second language that you don't know. You can only do it for so long. And so our brains are getting confused because what worked before doesn't now work. And that's why this webinar presentation is here today. So we need to find some balance and we need to pivot, and taking a break, taking a stretch break, not scheduling everything hour to hour if at all possible. And then maybe a phone is actually a tool that you can use and benefit from and give yourself a visual break. So think about your challenges personally. And again, if you want to share them with me, Sinette at speakingthatconnects.com, or give me a phone call. I'm curious to know what I don't know. So some of the liabilities of working from home and working on remote are that, as we mentioned, the eye contact and the feedback, it's hard to influence the same way. We don't get as much space. Everybody on some level is equal. We're all in the same rectangular box. But there's a liability of interruptions, noise, Some people shared with me that, particularly for court, there's so much more work that has to be done ahead of time because you're not bringing your documents to the judge. You have to have them prepared ahead of time. And you can't manage your client's shrug of a shoulder or nonverbal communication with an eye glare or a nudge, some way of body language influencing your client. You are all in separate spaces. Some of the benefits are that you can be more casual and maybe long-term or less image focused. So keep yourself in the light and position yourself with the best angle and dress appropriately, maybe all there is, and pick a virtual background that's really appropriate. Not having to commute is a benefit for many, many people. I know for corporate people in my area, they drive from Pennsylvania to New Jersey, but an hour and a half distance every day. They are very pleased to be working from home. So there is some time efficiency that can happen as well as increased productivity. Again, if you have other benefits, I'd like to hear from you. So what are the takeaways from what matters, virtual and live presentations and presenting at your best? Well, for any meeting, whether it's remote or in house, so to speak, you want to test your technology. In the Zoom space or the virtual platform space, you want to mute when you're not speaking, so you eliminate distraction and background noise. Always want to be seen favorably. So with the remote situation, as I mentioned before, you can impact your audience best by looking at the camera, just like broadcasters do, and adjust your lighting and background so it serves you. Limit multitasking, not as the presenter, but as the participant. I would say that is a courtesy to your viewer. But know what multitasking you can do that isn't distracting. And you manage your external distractions, commit to being present, I think is so much the inner piece that needs to happen. And finally, allow yourself to be patient with yourself, cultivate curiosity, and allow for change. So I am a workshop leader, speaker, support person, and provide communication coaching for a lot of different types of communication issues. If you have a need, please give me a call or please send me an email. The information is here on the screen. And finally, communication is the language of business. We, without speaking, hearing, reading, or writing, would not have a system of business at all. So I leave you with this offer if you have an interest. Instead of 3 sessions costing what they do, I'm giving you a special for August 2020 coaching. This first session is complimentary, and then you would receive the 3 sessions for a price of 2. Please call me about that. Mention NJLAP, NJAJ, or NJSBA to receive this benefit. Thank you very much, and may you present at your best in the virtual space or in the future when we get back to another new normal. Thank you.